All right, so we have an hour today together, and so I want to get started because we have a lot of great information to get through. So I first just want to thank everyone for joining us today for our Confronting COVID webinar. Today, we're here to learn how to support children after the death of a loved one. And I think it's really important because, grief is universal. Everyone will experience it, and it's really important that we know how to help the little ones in our lives. So today we will be hearing from Rosemary Huber. She will be our presenter, and my name is Brooke, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about the program, the Cove Center for Grieving Children, and we'll talk a bit about our programs, and then we'll jump into the webinar. Okay, so the Cove Center for Grieving Children, we have many different programs that help children and families who are grieving a loss. Some of our programs are listed here, which includes our family program, Camp Compassion, Cove in Schools, which is on pause right now, but we'll be getting back into it shortly, Caring Connection, our virtual Cove groups, and our Confronting COVID series. And if you have any desire to learn more about the programs after today, please visit our website. We'll be sure to post that in the chat. So to talk a little bit about our family program. So the family program is a 20-week program that takes place starting in September and going to June. It's delivered by a licensed therapist as well as volunteer facilitators. We're so grateful for our volunteer facilitators. We wouldn't be able to do any of this without them. And at the end of this presentation, if anyone feels that they might want to join the Cove and volunteer, feel free to hop onto our website. There are applications to become a volunteer. So, and you can feel free to also get in contact with me if you'd like to learn more. So the curriculum in the family program, it's based on creative expression. It's project-based, so kids will come together, they complete different activities, we have different themes, and the whole goal is to help children learn to cope with their grief and to heal, and just to have a safe place where they can process the grief with other people who have experienced something similar. So the families, the children in our program, they have lost someone, a parent, a sibling, a caregiver, someone that was a part of their daily lives. So we have sites that are currently meeting in person, which is great. Those sites are Meriden, Guilford, New Haven, West Hartford, and Stonington. So that's where the in-person family program meets. And then we also offer virtual groups, which is really exciting, and it's helpful for people that aren't able to get to any of the sites. So we have a group for teenagers, we have a young adult group, and then we have our male caregiver group. So if people are interested in these programs, you can hop over to our website, and we have the applications that you can fill out if you're interested in joining one of our programs. Camp Compassion. So this is a weekend-long sleepover camp where kids come together and, again, learn how to grieve the loss of a loved one. And camp is wonderful because there are fun activities for kids to, come together, have a good time, and then we're working in activities to help with grief and loss. The camp is free to all campers. Our family program, I also want to mention, is completely free to families. And so it's just a great opportunity for people to be able to, participate in this. So each cabin at the camp is going to have a lead clinician, and then there'll be volunteers that will be assisting the campers. There's a lot of emotion, a lot of stuff comes up for kids, and it's important that we have adults there that are safe for the kids to go to that can help them process what they're dealing with. And there are some pictures at the bottom. Okay, so that's Camp Compassion. The Cove in Schools program, also known as the Good Grief program. So this is an 8-week program where the Cove will come into a school and we will start a peer support group, usually consisting of 10 to 12 students. And so the whole goal is to provide students with a safe, familiar setting that they can come together, talk to other peers who have experienced grief and loss. Because a lot of times it can feel very isolating to be in school to be experiencing a loss and to feel like you're the only one. And the truth is you're not. And so our philosophy is we'll come in, we'll train the guidance counselor, school social worker, whoever is going to be continuing the program in the school. And then we have our curriculum for different age groups that we utilize. So after 8 weeks, again, the staff from the Cove will step out and the program will continue with the school's counselor or social worker. So that's a program that we're very excited to get up and running again. Please contact me if you have any questions. My name is Brooke Vines. I'm the program coordinator at the Cove Center for Grieving Children, and I'm happy to help answer any questions. If you are interested in volunteering, if you're interested in maybe joining one of our programs, please head over to our website. We have our applications there, and we would love to hear from you. And now we will get started with our webinar, Confronting COVID, which will be presented by Rosemary Huber. Rosemary is a licensed professional counselor. She's also certified as a school counselor, and she is currently working with high school students, and she also has a private practice. So I will pass the mic over to Rosemary, and thank you so much.
All right, well, yeah, thank you very much. Thank you to the Cove for having me present. I have to say I was a volunteer at Camp Compassion last June, and it was just an absolute amazing experience. And I will be part of it every year that I can. We were talking about it before we got on here. It was really an amazing experience to be part of camp and everything that the Cove does. They're making huge differences, differences in the lives of a lot of families and children. And it's amazing just over 3 days, the transformation that you can see with these children. So to start, specifically talking about COVID, the impacts of COVID-19 on grief, I think it's important just to take some time to look at these statistics. As of November 16th, 2022, so just a couple weeks ago, there were a total of 1,073,155 deaths due to COVID-19 have been reported in the United States. So that's right on the CDC website. 40% of Americans say they know one or more people who have died of the disease, and 15% of Americans report that a family member had died. So again, I think it's just so important to take a second to kind of look at these numbers. We've all been through a lot in the past few years, and I just think it's important to remember how many people have been impacted. I'm sure some of you on this call have had direct impact. And if you do have questions, you can put them in the chat. We'll try to check that at the end too. So when we're thinking about COVID, it's important to note two different types of losses. So we have a primary loss, which is the death of a loved one. So that's if someone had died as a result of COVID, that would be a primary loss. But in addition, there were so many secondary losses. So there were losses of intimacy, relationships, loss of employment, financial security, healthcare. For children, there was time with peers at school, enrichment activities, play dates. And I remember this so clearly working in a school. It was March 13th and we're thinking we're going out maybe till April break. And very quickly we realized that we were going to be out for an extended period of time and things were going to be different. So we had students, even as they've returned to school over the last, couple of years, we had the hybrid model. Then we have people are out for extended quarantine periods. So the disruptions to education have been tremendous. And all of you on this call that are teachers or working in the school system, I really commend you for all that you've done throughout these last 4 years. It's definitely, it's been hard, and we see you, and I know also our healthcare workers, but in particular, when I'm thinking about children and education, it was a really, really challenging time, and it still is. We're still dealing with some of the ripple effects from COVID. So when you think about a primary loss, meaning the death of a loved one, and then the secondary losses, this can really cause complicated grief, which we're going to get into in a little bit. So signs of grief, just kind of your general signs of grief. And these could be signs that come from the death of a loved one with COVID, but they could also be things from the secondary losses. So kind of shock, disbelief, denial, apathy, feeling like nothing matters, a lot of fear and anxiety. I think we really all experienced that during COVID. anger, periods of sadness, loss of sleep and appetite. A lot of times our body lets us know what's going on before we're even able to say how we're feeling. We might see changes in our sleep patterns, our eating habits, obviously with children too. We might feel guilt, regret, self-blame. We might start to question our religious beliefs. A lot of uncertainty and lack of clarity. Again, COVID just compounded all of these things. Loneliness. There were many people that were living at home by themselves, and they, it was scary to go out and meet with someone else. If you were living with a partner or someone who died during COVID, that loneliness, again, just exasperated. And then, difficulty concentrating and, among many other signs of grief. But again, when we talk about COVID in particular, when someone experienced a death of a loved one due to COVID and compounded with all the secondary losses, complicated grief, it was kind of like a perfect storm for complicated grief, which complicated grief is an ongoing heightened state of mourning that keeps you from healing. So I liked this graphic. It kind of shows this intense sorrow and pain over the death of a loved one, constant rumination. So they're constantly focusing on the death. So they're not really able to think about anything else. Whereas when you might see when someone's grieving and they're on more of a healthy, regular, I don't want to say right, like a regular grieving path, you'll see periods of, wow, this was fun, we had a good day, and then kind of go back into that sadness where when someone's really in this complicated grief, it's hard to see or do anything else or to find joy in anything else. Inability to accept the loved one's death, numbness, detachment, bitterness over the death. And then they might find, loss of meaning or purpose in their own life. Inability to enjoy things, carry out normal routines, or recall pleasant memories. So that inability to go back and say, oh yeah, I remember this, that was a great time, pulling from those pleasant memories to kind of help healing. A belief that you could have caused or that the death could have been prevented. And again, with COVID, I've seen this come up more, even, in my private practice too, especially with someone, passing away from COVID. There's this fear that we're going to get grandma sick, or did I cause this? Did I bring this home from school? Was it because I went to my friend's house? We're all talking about keeping safe, and our kids are hearing these things. So it's important, we'll get into this, but it's really important that children in particular know there is nothing they did to cause the death of their loved ones. And then feeling, just kind of despondent and wishing that they were dead along with their loved ones. So it's really important, if you're seeing any of these signs of complicated grief, in yourself, in your loved ones, in your students, that we connect them to get more care. So how do children grieve differently than adults? Children's grief reflects their current stage of development. Children's grief is often accompanied by regressive behavior. So this is really important to remember as we go through some of these next slides. The information I share is just kind of estimates of these age groups, but the regression is seen very common when a child is experiencing grief, that they're going to go back and kind of act almost the way some of the previous groups, younger age groups act. Children express their grief through behaviors versus their verbal expression. So you see that little guy in the corner, he's really angry. They might not have the words, but they're going to see it in their kind of acting out, their inability to sit still or to do anything, or running around, high energy, low energy, both could be completely normal. And I found this quote, I thought this was great. Any child who is old enough to love is old enough to mourn. And that is very important. I mean, you see these babies come into the world and that they love you and they're looking at you with their eyes, and they're depending on you for their care. But I think it's important, I know it is important to remember that all age groups really need love and support after the death of a loved one. So in this first slide, we're going to talk about infants and toddlers, just kind of a little, their pre-language, their primal feelings and needs, and obviously a lack of understanding. They don't necessarily know what's going on, but they know something changed. So common responses would be, they're most affected by the mood of the caregiver, which is, however that primary caregiver is feeling, they're going to pick right up on that. So they're going to have a distressed reaction to the change in routine, maybe crying sporadically or more frequently, eating, sleeping, bathroom changes, increased attachment to the primary caretaker, So that could be the primary caretaker that always was there, or if it was the death of the primary caretaker, the new primary caretaker. And an inability to self-soothe. So a child who is maybe able to get themselves comfortable is going to need a lot more attention and help soothing. So again, how to help. When upset, most infants are soothed by physical contact. So, pick up the bereaved child when they cry, wear them. Those front carriers are really great for kids, especially to let them kind of hear your heartbeat and give them motion, keep them close. Even simple baby massage. Talk and smile at them as much as possible, kind of use concrete languages, 0 to 3, with the older kids. So the 2 and the 3-year-olds, you want to make sure you're using concrete language. And this is going to come up again and again, but language like death, died. You don't want to say sleep. You don't want them to be confused. So just being really literal and concrete in the language that you use. And try to keep changes to a minimum. I know this is hard. Obviously, there's been a loss in the family, of death. It's important to try to keep the routine for kids as much as possible. And again, I think it's important to know you cannot spoil a child with too much love and attention, especially following the death of a loved one. That's just keep giving the love and the hugs are usually good for the caregivers too. So age 3 to 6 are preschoolers. They really become more independent at this age. They're starting to focus on the adults and children outside of the family, probably in like a preschool or kindergarten program. They kind of explore and inquire about all the things around them. They learn the consequences of their behavior. Their thinking becomes more concrete and literal. They also have magical thinking, the belief that one's ideas, thoughts, or actions can kind of cause or influence things in the world. So especially with death, it's important to let them know that, they did not cause this death. They didn't do anything to contribute to this death. So common responses might be thumb sucking, bedwetting, their normal anxieties intensified, a real fear of separation and abandonment. They might not want to go or, go to school, things like that. And again, the change in the eating, sleeping, and bathroom, you see that across most of the children. And how to help, it's really keeping that routine, keeping the routine as normal as possible, and try to meet their needs promptly and gently. If you see that something, they need something, try to take care of it as soon as you can. Reassure them that they did nothing to cause the death. Again, that simple, concrete language, encouraging play. And it really, back to that routine, it might not be that they're ready to go back to preschool or kindergarten right away, but it's really, even if you have to do shortened days, keeping that routine as much as you can. And just how important the play is, that the children really heal and kind of work things out through play. Age 6 to 11, so our elementary school students, which I know 6 to 11 is a big age jump. You have your first graders up to your fifth graders. But they're really, they're learning through observation, they're exploring independence, they're socializing and developing friend groups. At this age, they start to understand that death is final and irreversible. So common responses, anger, sorrow, confusion, school refusal, emotional reactions expressed through play. So again, they might be playing and you might see kind of them acting out with the characters, whether, they're dolls or they're action figures, increased clinginess, fear of loss, depression, and even some suicidal ideation possibly with the younger kids. They might say, I want to die like grandpa died, and I want to go to heaven. I miss grandpa, or I miss mom, I miss dad, I miss my brother. So you have to just be aware of those things and get additional help if needed. How to help, I think at this age it is really important to collaborate with the school. So these kind of how to help things are really geared towards schools and what families and schools can do together. So develop a plan to assist the child, especially in providing emotional help during like an emotional grief outburst. So if a student is in your class or they're acting out, they're crying, we don't want to punish, right? So we know this child is grieving. So what can we do? Let's have an open pass. Let's have a movement break. One of my favorite things is to just with the younger kids, just take a letter, piece of paper, and write a letter to your friend who's on the other side of the building, another teacher, and have that student, hey, can you go bring this to Mr. Smith for me? He's on the other side of the building. He's waiting for this. Here's a ream of paper. Can you go drop this off for him? And then the child gets to feel like they're contributing, they're doing something, and they're kind of getting out and able to move their body. If they're in, crisis, obviously you can go to your support staff, which we'll talk more about at school. And then again, with the workload, so modify, on a temporary basis, we'd like to modify academic expectations, but we don't want to remove all expectations. It's important to keep structure and let the children feel like they're contributing. They want to feel good. We want to make them feel good and proud of what they're doing. But maybe if there's a, math homework with 20 problems on it, just circle the top 5 and say, hey, can you work on these 5? And if they can't do them at home, maybe they can work on them in class. So when they, homework's getting passed out, it's not that they didn't participate and they feel good and they have that sticker on their sheet, but that they were part of the class, and that as they're ready to do more, you can add on to that. So again, establish a routine to provide a feeling of safety for the child. Encourage participation in regularly scheduled activities. Again, that's after school activities, in school activities. Provide opportunity for creative play and expression. So, doing art, coloring, and even thinking back on our experience in camp. I mean, there were so many great art activities that the children did, and they didn't even have to be specifically for grief. It's not like, here, we're going to draw a picture and we're going to, draw a picture of mom. But it's just like, let them be free, let them write and talk and say whatever comes out. There's no right or wrong. And then all of a sudden you'll get a picture and, they're doing a family picture and, oh, who's that? Oh, that's grandma. She's in heaven. Oh, tell me about grandma. So this is a long process. It takes a lot of time, but it's just important to have some ideas and kind of encourage them to be creative and use these outlets. So our middle school students, so age 11 to 13, they have a more complete understanding of the finality of death, but they also believe they are invincible. They are, we could do whatever. Alternating between dependence and independence. So they're kind of straddling that, elementary school and high school. It's exactly what it is. Those middle school students, they want that independence, but they also do need a lot from the adults around them. And they're exploring new skills. They're trying different things. They might be trying different sports and activities. They haven't quite, mastered or figured out one thing that they want to do. Same thing with their academics. They might be trying different things. They're starting to identify with some group norms, so like their gender, different groups at school, different ages. And then they become curious kind of about their philosophical and spiritual beliefs. So the thought of, what else besides just me and this earth, and going through the death, going through the grieving process, they might be influenced by their families' spiritual beliefs. A lot of people call on their spiritual beliefs after the death of a loved one. So common responses, mood swings, we saw those with our middle schoolers before the death of a loved one. So the mood swings are definitely going to intensify. They may also refuse to go to school, or they may become completely immersed in school and just want to be at school. You might see them withdrawn or acting out, easily overwhelmed, self-esteem or confidence issues. Again, that possible depression or suicidal ideation. And poor decision-making, so possible substance abuse, promiscuity. And again, this is why it is just so important to kind of keep them in the routine and, have them doing activities and things that are positive. So how to help, you want to provide assistance and flexibility with schoolwork. At this age group, it's usually there's multiple teachers. So now you've gone from maybe having one primary classroom teacher who can manage the expectation to now, possibly 4 or 5 different subject teachers. So I think it is important to kind of connect together using, the school counselor, other school supports, to make sure that you are holding the student accountable to work, but in an appropriate way, like an appropriate amount. So maybe scaling down the work, make sure they have a routine and know what to do. Encourage the child to express their feelings, physical activities, creative activities, drawing, journaling, writing songs. I have a lot of students, we have a music program at my school, and the kids just love the music. And I've actually learned a lot about different things related to grief. I also run a grief group at school through music. So I have students that are doing both, and it's really great to see them doing something positive as a result of the grief. And then connecting students to after school programs. I think this is probably one of the most important for this age group. 11 to 13, they possibly, at this age, they might be home alone. They might be helping to care for younger siblings, but school might get out at 2:30. So what are they doing with the rest of the day so that we can make sure that they are not tempted with poor decision making? So if you know of any programs, I would really make sure that these students are connected, especially if it was a possible primary caregiver who had died. So that person who may have been facilitating the after school activities and the things might not be there to do that. And the students are coming to school. The other parent or caregiver might be just getting them to school, it's enough, but let's see what can we do after. So if you have an after school program, sports, anything, try to get these students in particular involved. So our high school students, these are age like 13 to 18, kind of experimenting with different roles and priorities. They develop their distinct identity, although I have seen it change from ninth grade to 12th grade as they're kind of figuring out who they are. But they turn towards their peers for a sense of belonging. They really want to be with each other. They're starting to have independence and driving, many of them might be working. They understand that death is permanent. They begin to kind of question the meaning of life, like, what's next? What's this all about? Continued exploration of their philosophical and their spiritual beliefs. Common responses, the caregiver role, which is a really tough space for these kids to be in. A lot of times they are taking on that caregiver role. And I know, as schools, we can't always, control that, but just encouraging the family, like if there's how we can get them support. So even connecting the family to outside agencies so that the responsibility doesn't have to just fall on the older sibling. And, difficulty managing kind of those big emotions. Fear for safety of self and others. So now they have these friends, they're all connected to their friends, and now they understand that death is final and things happen. So they're worried about themselves, they're worried about their friends and something happening. They might be struggling with academics and school attendance, or it could be the opposite, that extreme perfectionism. So they're kind of throwing themselves all into school, or they're not able to concentrate and they're not coming to school. I've definitely seen that where I work after the death of a loved one, where you see increased absenteeism. So again, an increased risk for risky behavior, substance abuse and promiscuity, and that's why we want to really try to double down on getting these kids involved in pro-social activities, positive activities. So encouraging them to ask questions, validate their feelings, give them room to grieve. Especially with the students who may be struggling to come to school, maybe there's another place, maybe they can go into a quiet workspace or have it worked out that they can come and sit down in the school counseling office or the social worker's office, even for just 20 minutes a day, if they know they have that to look forward to. Sometimes that can really help get them in the building. And while they're there, just having them do like a little coloring sheet or an activity, or just kind of talking. And again, it doesn't have to be about grief. It's really about kind of building that relationship so that when they're ready to talk, they know that they have a safe adult to go to. And try to maintain structure. That's why I really want to, keep these children coming to school. It's really important for them to come. And when they do come, we want to greet them with, great to see you. So glad you're here. Not, where have you been? I can't believe you're not here. You're so far behind. That's only going to deter these students from coming more. And again, be careful not to add on too many responsibilities. A lot of times as the oldest in the family, they can be taking on additional things, and even, seeing students have to work to help support their families. It's just important to remember. So just some additional ways on how to support students in school. I really like the idea of, if you know that there was a death in the family, if you can reach out to the grieving student and the family before they return to school. And that really probably depends on the age level and the setup of the school, who would be doing that. Maybe in an elementary school, if it's one teacher for the class, they might reach out. I know at my school, as a school counselor, I'm usually one of the first to find out whether the student lets me know, or the parent calls it in for attendance, and we know. And then with the students' permission and the family's permission, I like to let the teachers know what the student is going through. And it says, let the grieving student decide how to handle that return. Obviously that's going to be, age appropriate. So I'd say like middle school, honestly, even in 4th and 5th grade, you can have a conversation with a student like, hey, I want to let your teachers know, what do you think it's important for them to know? So they really feel like invested in what you're sharing. And at the high school level, I include the students on the email a lot of times. I'll send an email and I'll say, hi, so-and-so is included on this email. We wanted to let you know. just so they hear firsthand what I'm saying. Keep expectations reasonable, balance the routine with expectations, provide learning supports as needed, and use the words death, dying, and dead instead of passed away or lost. And anticipate grief triggers. It's not, you're not always going to be able to know what is a grief trigger, right? There could be this favorite song that he always listened to with his friend, and happens to hear it when he's got his AirPod on in the hallway or sneaking in your classroom, and all of a sudden he's upset. But there are other grief triggers that are universal, right? So we have Mother's Day, Father's Day, even graduations. I mean, that's a big one in school, right? I always expected grandma to be at graduation, and she's not here. So as we're celebrating and there's these good things to look forward to, just kind of remember that these could also be really triggering for students. And really don't be afraid to ask how they're doing. I think that sometimes we kind of don't talk, we don't know what to say, so we say nothing. And I pulled up this graphic because I really liked it. Kind of the teacher out in the hallway just pulled the student aside. They don't want to be asked how they're doing necessarily in front of their peers, but just taking a minute, pull them aside, even an email. My school uses like a texting app for students. Just, hey, thinking of you. If you need anything, let me know. And they might not respond with needing anything, but you can follow up with, just, I know if homework gets tough, or just let me know if you're struggling with anything. Just starting that conversation and continuing to build that relationship really goes a long way. Remember that grief is unique. So you might have had a student in your class last year whose family member died, and they were fine and they got right back to work. And this student, I can't believe it's taking him so long. We all will process grief differently. And you want to collaborate with your school support staff. I'll talk a little more about that. And again, grief is a lifelong process. So you may have a child in your classroom, you could be in the high school, and you could have a child who lost a parent in elementary school. And I will tell you that is still affecting that child at the high school level. It doesn't matter if it's been 5 years or 10 years, they are still thinking about that person, and there will be grief triggers that come up for them. So it is important to know. Actually, right now, I work in a high school. I have seniors. It's college essay season. They're finishing those. So that's always an activity where we learn a lot about students and a lot about experiences that they've had, including the death of loved ones. So a lot of times I know in your classrooms you'll be doing activities and you will learn things about your students. So where to go for additional support? I think in the school it's just really important to know who your school resources are. And I know all schools can be different, but obviously I'm a school counselor. I try to make myself available to all my students, but also to the staff. I like to collaborate with the people I work with to let them know I'm here to support. If they have ideas, they usually come to me and say, oh, this is what the student told me. And I absolutely love that, because then we can work together, because the teachers do hear a lot of things before we do. You have a lot of schools have school social workers, school psychologists, your nurse, administration, and a lot of schools have a crisis team. So if you're not sure about your crisis team, definitely ask and see, who's on that. And again, there could be a death in your school family. And unfortunately, we have experienced that too. So kind of what's that crisis team if there's a death in the family, the school, I say family, I feel for a family, but in the school, whether that is, a teacher or a student or someone in the community that was important to many, the coach. So yeah, where to go for additional support. So really self-care, this is I think the most important thing for teachers and just all helping professionals. Self-care must be a priority. There is always going to be one more thing to do, and you have to set healthy boundaries for your time. Create healthy habits. So just move your body, drink water, frequent healthy snacks. So even if you have a prep period, or you're walking the kids to a class, just take a minute, take a lap, have a drink of water away from your computer, make a cup of tea. Have some frequent healthy snacks ready to go. Plan things to look forward to. So it could be something, and these don't have to be grand things. These could be little things. It could be, meeting with a friend after work. It could be watching a favorite show. There's some obviously some great stuff on there. Listening to a podcast. There's a little picture of a great self-care for educators podcast. Listening to a book. But have things that you're looking forward to, things that you want to plan. It could be taking a class, doing just fun, healthy things. And then connect with other helping professionals and educators. Spend time with your pet. I should have put a picture of my dog up here. But yeah, spend time with your pet. Again, read a book, listen to a podcast, and monitor your screen time. I know we all love our devices and we use them in school, right? So after COVID, everyone, had a computer, and we've done so much on Google Classroom and Microsoft. Monitor your screen time and make sure that when you're on social media in particular, that you flood your feed with positivity. I'm not saying don't be on social media, but go through your account and just make sure you're following. There's so much good content out there too. So make sure that you are following good content. And what's good content for me might not necessarily be good content for you. I always say, like, how do you feel when you look at something? You're scrolling through your phone and you see something, and it could be this like amazing picture of a friend or something, and they're out cutting down their Christmas tree with their family of 5, and that's triggering. So you know what, you can hit mute and say, I don't want to see this right now, and that's okay, and they won't know that. But if something feels good, then follow it. With TikTok, look at it for a couple more seconds so you'll get more of that in your feed. But really monitor your screen time, set boundaries around your screen time, so that you feel good when you're off of that, and set a time limit. It's good to say, like, okay, I can do this for 10-15 minutes. And then take a break, and celebrate your successes. I feel like my educators are not always the best at this. We're moving on to the next thing. There's great stuff going on in and out of the classroom. Same with my peers, the other helping professionals. Good things happen, and then we're quickly on to, like, okay, what's next? And if something doesn't go, a lesson or something doesn't go as planned, we might be thinking about that more. So just really take time to celebrate your successes, share them with your other peers. If something really worked well in your class, or you got through to a student that's been hard, share that information. And if you get stuck, seek professional help. The EAP programs are great. I mean, in all the school districts and most public jobs, really most jobs now. So it's your employee assistance program. And you can usually get like 5 to 6 counseling sessions with no even out-of-pocket copay. And it doesn't have to be for any particular reason. You can just be like, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Being a teacher in 2023 or 22, 23 is enough of a reason to contact EAP, or being really in healthcare or any helping profession. So taking the time to talk to someone can be really beneficial in terms of taking care of yourself, so that you're ready to go back in the classroom and work with these students, and especially the students who are dealing with grief. So I'm going to go to my little question. Let's see if okay. So how can I we can. Yes, I will email this PowerPoint. That was a good question. So will we get a copy of this PowerPoint sent to our email? Yes, I am happy to send this PowerPoint out. What do you like most about working with high school students, and how does your school address grief and loss? Good question, actually. So I love the high school I work at. I'm at a high school. I've been there for 17 years. And one of the things that I do is I run a grief group. So in addition to working with my grade level, I do a grief group, which has all different students in it. We actually just had another group started last week, and it was a really great session. And these students could be referred from their counselors, from teachers, we have a students assistance team, but it's handled individually. Not every student is ready to participate in group. So we might just do some individual counseling with them. We might try to connect them to outside providers. And I've had students who've had a loss during maybe their 9th or 10th grade year and have just joined the group this year as seniors, so they're ready. So how can we support grieving kids over the holidays? That's a great question too. I know in my grief group, one of the things we do, we talk about, holidays and traditions. And I love ornaments. We can call them winter ornaments. They can be for Christmas trees, but I love when, even myself, when I can have something tangible in my hand and I can put that on my tree or put it on a window, could be anywhere, to kind of remember that person. So we make ornaments in our group, in our grief group, right around the week of Christmas, but also talking about traditions. So what was something that they really enjoyed doing with the person who died, and let's do it. If there was a favorite recipe, if there was, mom's cookies, mom's fruitcake that maybe nobody even liked, but let's make it because it's fun. You know, those are the types of things over the holidays. And just really telling the students that, like, you know, if this is the first holiday without that person, like, you know, I'm thinking of you. I know this is the first Christmas without mom, like just thinking of you, you know, that's it. That goes so far. It's not, you know, so much of what we have to do is just letting them know that we know they are grieving through the holidays. So what made you both want to work in the area of grief and loss, and isn't it sad? See, that's a question that gets my heart. So it is sad, but it's, you know, you got me tearing up now, but it's, I lost my mom when I was 10 years old. And that was about 34 years ago. And it's totally shaped who I am. I don't know how it couldn't, but I find so much joy in working with these children that my mom is with me every day when I'm doing this work. So, so thank you, Bree. That was, yeah, it is sad, but it is so necessary. And it is one of the only things that we're all going to experience. We hope not to experience complicated grief or tragic loss, but no one is immune to loss. No one is immune to death. And even if COVID taught us that, right? So even people who you could have had all the money in the world, you could have all these things that you think you need. Guess what? You couldn't get a ticket to a concert. You couldn't get on an airplane. So grief is this universal experience. And especially when I'm working with students and we're talking about grief, and I'm working with some of my private clients, and you know, definitely gotten creative with grief. I have a student with a couple different private clients, and especially the teenage boys, we meet on the trail, we go for a walk. They don't want to sit in here and, you know, and look at me, although it's getting cold. I told them we're gonna have to come up with a game, maybe play chess or something, but we've been walking on the trail and it's just great. You know, we kind of look at nature, and we've been able to see nature change over the course of this year. And it's been great. So yes, it's absolutely, I don't even know if I'd say sad, it's emotional, but that's life. And I love that they trust me to talk about these things with them. Yeah, and how to get involved with the Cove, like totally get involved. It's an amazing organization. And I actually had sent students to their camp before I even was able to volunteer. And it really worked out last year that I was able to help you know, to kind of get involved. And it was a wonderful experience for me. But they have all different things. But if anyone is free, I think it's usually the first weekend in June for the camp. It is just an amazing, amazing experience. And I know I work in a school, and I was one day that I missed, I was able to get it approved as a professional leave, because it really was a professional development activity in addition to, you know, a volunteer opportunity. I think it would be good for anyone in school to spend time there. So what is the reason, let's see, another question. What is the reason we want to avoid passed away and use death terms? It's real, especially with the younger kids, it's that do they think they're sleeping? I mean, you don't want to say like, oh, they're lost. Like they'll be like, well, where are they? So really being as concrete as possible is really what helps. So just like death, dying, and it gets us all comfortable with the language. I think we avoid it because we're uncomfortable, and if we can get the kids comfortable with it, then as adults they're not going to be as uncomfortable with it. So we got to start with the kids. I know, and I'll say loss and stuff like that, it kind of interchangeably even throughout this webinar, but with the younger kids really in particular, you have to use death and dying. They need to understand that death is final, and that they are not coming, that the person is not coming back. So with COVID, what to do if a child didn't say goodbye? Yes, really good question. And again, loss of, you know, even the funerals, things were different. Students and children were not able to go in and say goodbye to their loved ones. I didn't put the evaluation in there, but I will. They didn't get to say goodbye to their loved ones, but they could write a letter. This was some of the stuff that we did in camp. They could write a letter, they could write a song, they could make a card. And it's hard, and it's sitting with them and letting them know that, yes, this is hard and you didn't get to say goodbye, but let's say goodbye now. What would you say to them? There's in the camp, they do a beautiful luminary. So it's, they make like a jar, and they kind of put them out onto the water, and it's absolutely beautiful. But those are things that they could do even in their own you know, in your classroom, in their home with a social worker. So I'm going to see if I can post this in here. Let's see. I tried to, let's see, type my answer. Yeah, so I just posted, hopefully you guys can see it. I just posted the form. It's just a Google form. So just make sure you let us know what age group you want the kit to be sent to. Oh, only we see it, Brooke. Okay, so how do I do this? I'm gonna figure this out.
I wonder if we can post it in the Q&A.
Okay, how do I do that? Let's see. Answered, open. Oh, I don't know. Let's see. I could, maybe I will put it in the bottom. Let's see. I'm going to type the answer here. I'm just putting it in the bottom of the answer. Let's see if that works. If everybody can see that, I don't know. Do you guys have access to that?
So
let me see. I'll type it on that last one again. Let's see if I just keep putting that in there.
and what we can also do is we can email this out to folks. If you don't see it, we can email that link out, but you should be able to see it in the Q&A portion under answered questions. Under Sarah Lynn's question, that you should see Rosemary's form that she linked.
All right, let's see how I do. Did it work okay?
If you can see the form, can you just state that in the Q&A?
Okay. Yeah, all right. Here, if you don't see it, I will post it again underneath your thing. But yeah, I know we had someone who was able to see the form. I see the form. Okay, great. All right, excellent. Yeah, I thank you guys so much for taking the time to meet with us. And really, the Cove is just a wonderful organization. And any of you that are thinking about getting involved, please do. And we'll email out the presentation so you can take a look at it. But thank you very much.
Thank you all so much. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to shoot us an email. Please feel free to let us know your thoughts in the evaluation. We're so grateful for everyone who came to participate and to our funders. So again, thank you so much, and we hope to hear from you all soon.
All right. Thank you, Brooke.